Hey there, welcome to episode 85 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I'm your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. We are recording today's episode at 11:41 in the morning on October 1st. And you know what that means if you are in the exciting world of open source anything, usually open source software development, but that's evolving over time. It is, of course, the first day of Hacktoberfest 2024, year 11, on this, our 85th episode in season 1. We start counting at 0, so our second season on this October 1st. So thanks for participating. Hopefully you are not delaying your commencement of Hacktoberfest 2024 activities. I signed up for my badge already. Last year I did not actually contribute any pull requests that were valid or that I pursued. I did work on our own projects, but they were not pull requests, so a finer point of the rules. But this year we'll see. I need to get out more, see what some other projects are doing, and we'll talk about that in today's episode. If you are new, if you've never chimed in, if you've never heard me chiming in, the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program is about our foundation. We are a Nevada nonprofit, public charity, 501c3. We were originally the Code for Vegas Foundation. We were originally Code for Vegas, part of Code for America, about 10 years ago. Yeah, I think it's about 10 years ago. 10 to 12 years ago, I think it was. Anyway, Code for Vegas in Las Vegas was instrumental in deploying the open data platform that is still in use today. Code for Vegas took a pause. We rebooted it just slightly, 2 years ago, March, but officially rebooting into a Nevada nonprofit corporation in June, 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago. And then we got our determination in October, which is, of course, retroactive to our formation date. So we have been a 501c3 nonprofit for 2 years and 5 months, something like that. And so we talk about it. Sometimes we have interviews. Sometimes it's just me giving a little update on the scenery. And that is what we'll do today. So wherever you found this audio program, hopefully you can find the episode description. Within, you will find the show notes and a summary that I will read to you nearly verbatim. And then a few links, including 3 that are the usual, kind of pointing back to our own stuff, and 3 related specifically to Hacktoberfest. 4 links for Hacktoberfest. Hacktoberfest 11, 2024. So let's begin so we can wrap this up and get to some pull requests. Summary of today's episode. That time of year is upon us once again, a truly scary time indeed, when the curious and inexperienced are invited to sprinkle some contribution to open source projects or initiatives out on the internets, wherever the lights are on, and a Hacktoberfest tag or topic has been left like a creature of darkness between the curious and the candy. It is good, but is it great? Referring to Hacktoberfest itself. I'm not bashing Hacktoberfest, but I have some ideas. So we'll get to those. The link section, once again, if you've heard this show before, you'll know our homepage is innovateforvegas.org. FOR, no numbers. One big word, no spaces or dashes or anything. Innovateforvegas.org. It is a website desperately in need of some editing at this point. And I have so many hats on so many hooks behind me. I got to pull down the web designer. Get that updated. Our GitHub organization has more current stuff on it. GitHub.com/innovateforvegas. Once again, FOR spelled out. It's not a number. It's not FOUR, and it's not the number 4. Innovate for Vegas. No dashes, hyphens, dots. You can see our initiatives. We're migrating to Agile for Volunteers, which is an ongoing thing. It's kind of the top of the list right now. So is everything. Project Act on GitHub. That's github.com/project-hyphen. It's the key next to the 0 on your keyboard. Project Act Project ACT, Autonomous Cohort Tessellation. The tessellation component, there's also the transformation component. Tessellation is about creating the connections. Well, it's about enabling discovery. And then on top of that, enabling and encouraging connection, communication, and collaboration between civic volunteer organizations like Innovate for Vegas Foundation, like Code for SAC, which is, I think, OpenSAC now, Open Fresno, maybe Hack for LA, maybe Code for Chicago. No, what is it? Open Chicago, etc. There's a whole bunch of groups out there. They face a similar challenge as one faces participating in Hacktoberfest, which we'll get into. So Project ACT, still in its early stages, but we're coming along. Hacktoberfest 11, the Hacktoberfest. So it's literally Hacktoberfest, Hacktoberfest. Hacktoberfest.com. You can go there to sign up. You can go there to find out more information and then sign up. And it will walk you through if you're an absolute beginner with open source and contributions to projects and how that all works. You can sign up for your holopin badge and you can display it proudly on the streets of the virtual world. I have some tea. The tea was helping prior to my beginning this recording. So we'll see if continuing to drink, it's pretty hot. Drinking this tea will calm my voice a little bit. I was outside earlier. It's almost noon now. So I'm sure I picked up some of the particulates, as always. I have links to 2 searches. One is an example GitHub topic search for Hacktoberfest. That is how you find Hacktoberfest ready projects to contribute to or to just look at, see what's going on. GitHub, and then the other one is GitLab. GitLab is like an open source competitor to GitHub that you can self-host and whatnot. Both of them will show you the unfiltered collection of projects that are available to peruse. You can filter from there. So this is sort of everything. Hacktoberfest only supports GitHub and GitLab, which is unfortunate. We'll talk about that. So you can jump in there to get started or at least look around, see what's going on. And then I say this all the time, not everything is code. And on the Hacktoberfest website, somewhere on the top navigation, you'll see mention of no code contributions, I think it says. Let me see what that says. Low or non-code contributions. It doesn't say contributions, but low or non-code. So you're not a coder, but you can still join in. And in fact, I always tell people, if the world was run by coders, it would be even worse than it is now. So there's definitely a need for non-coder participation, like normal people that speak different languages, people that like to write, people that like to edit, people that like to manage the efforts of others so that they can make the most of their volunteer time. People who like to create icons, web interfaces, videos, do some marketing, telling stories. Nobody will use your project if they don't know about it and if they're not excited to try it. Something we have going for us here in Vegas are 40 million visitors, but we have to tell them a story. So there's always a way to contribute to the efforts of people volunteering their time. You don't have to be a coder. So there is a github.com link. I think they call it the README project. It is, it's linked from, like I said, the low or non-code link on the Hacktoberfest page, but I also link to it here. Open source non-code contributions. So it goes into some details about a real world scenario with the Astro platform and some other. So basically, you can participate in all this stuff. You don't need to be a programmer. And the world will be better for it. So let's begin with the show. So today is October 1st. The clock is ticking. The floodgates are open to contribute to correctly labeled projects on GitHub or GitLab. Only those 2 platforms. To be honest, I didn't look to see if they support self-hosted GitLab instances. Something tells me they don't. But check that out if you are so inclined. I know that the GNOME project has their own GitLab instance. I'm sure others do as well. It's one of the limitations, I think, of Hacktoberfest, so we'll talk about that later. Hacktoberfest continues from October 1st until I want to say it's 11 a.m. Pacific time, sometime during the day on October 31st. I don't know if that's a globally friendly October 31st ending or if that's US centric. I gotta be honest, I didn't really look at the time. That's 31, nearly, less than 31 days away, but certainly 30. So it's during the day, so you'll still have time to get your costume on Halloween if you celebrate that holiday. Anyone who wants to add a repository or two to the mix can do so at any time through the month of October. So if you're a maintainer and you want to put your project in the rotation, this may be a good strategic consideration, holding off a couple of days to avoid the start of the race, so to speak. So when I looked at the topic search on GitHub, there were projects that were last modified like minutes and an hour, 2 hours before. So I think people are fiddling with the dials, maybe taking a first pull request or something. So there's going to be a little bit of that, starting line jitters and angst, and then people get up and running and then give it a couple days to settle down. Like when the shuttle launches, there's like a 2.5 second delay while the shuttle settles after the old shuttle. They don't use that anymore. Okay, that was a little off topic. You can sign up at the Hacktoberfest site, and among other things, as I mentioned, or as I hinted, you can get a holopin, HOLOPIN badge. I think it's holopin.io, but they should point you in the correct direction. And you can sign up for Hacktoberfest with your GitHub account. You probably need a GitHub account in your life if you're even thinking about this stuff. So you can get your badge for the event, which you can then display proudly as you see fit. So there are several upsides to Hacktoberfest. What are they? Good question. Open source is a good thing. Whether it is something you or someone you know might be interested in, may want to dive into for the long term, or perhaps you're just simply curious about this mysterious thing you hear about all the time, but it is still mysterious. What is open source? What does that even mean? And, side note, with so much drama with licensing and business model, open source is not a business model, which is true. A lot of software is not released in an open source compatible or friendly way using open source compatible licenses and so on. So I'm seeing it more and more. 10 open source tools that can replace commercial, whatever. And then when you look through them, you're like, that's not open source. I mean, the source available, but check the fine print. But still, if you're curious, if you're interested, if you use open source software, and here's a little hint, you do, whether you know it or not. So everybody kind of depends on open source software, open source a lot of things. So if you would like to dip a toe, as they say, you can. Anyone who dips that metaphorical toe into the open source waters, who finds it interesting or even enjoyable, might become a regular contributor to some projects or a maintainer of their own projects. The cycle of life continues. So you kind of got to recruit people, indoctrinate them into this whole, wait, I can work on stuff and not get paid? Tell me more. But first, do some work. It is sort of like that, but then it's a big picture thing. And hopefully that will become clear if you wander around a little bit. Either way, knowing a bit more about the open source terrain, the methodologies, the personalities, and so on can go a long way. So an event that happens every October, this is the 11th year, for the month, the entire month, provides a bit of visibility and exposure to the world. If you do something really cool, somebody might notice, who knows? And luckily there is nothing particularly distracting going on in the world otherwise to diminish the value of this exposure. So yeah, it's Hacktoberfest, and I cannot think of anything going on anywhere at all on this October 1st, 2024. So, I mean, if there was a massive hurricane that caused ridiculous amounts of damage and took 130 lives so far, or conflicts that are getting really serious, or an upcoming election, I could see that being distracting, but I think we're all clear. There are some downsides. These will be my opinions, and I'm not anti-Hacktoberfest, so I'm just, taking a devil's advocate, as they say. Downsides part one, the maintainers, the people on the project side, they own the project or they maintain it. It's right there in the name. Participation on the maintainer side is, of course, opt-in. You're not forced. You have to actually physically, manually add a Hacktoberfest topic. It looks like a tag, but you add it in the repository about interface. So you can opt in or not. But there may be some unexpected chaos with this choice, especially if you've never done it before. It's not awful, but you may, as a maintainer, be the more popular repo in the search results. So that means you may need to contend with a lot more pull requests and a lot more anything that entails. Because of the way the search results are presented, you're not necessarily going to be at the top of the page every time. Hopefully that will sort of self-correct. But, if you're getting a lot of attention or people say, oh, this looks like a cool project, go contribute to that. I heard one story, I don't think it was Hacktoberfest related. It might have been, but some repository started receiving pull requests like crazy. It turns out some computer science teacher, programming teacher somewhere said, hey, let's pick a project and everybody do a pull request. What could go wrong? So the maintainer of the project was like, what is going on? Why am I getting these all kinds of pull requests? So you kind of have to be ready to get a lot more traffic than you were anticipating, or none. On the flip side, you may be like, hey, where's everybody? And I will mention a statistic when I get there. I don't know at all how much a problem this will be. But generally speaking, AI tools, that's what this is. Generally speaking, AI tools are making for some shortcutting on the part of the junior coders. They may not understand what they're writing. It may do something close to what they want, but which will be interesting to see in general. Will this make for better pull requests or worse? I don't know. What are the implications regarding ownership of the pull requests? This has been transferred to the project. This is something a newcomer might not quite understand or grok. Well, a little double meaning there. When you contribute to open source projects, you have to have the rights to the contribution you're making. So ideally, they're your own, whether it's written word, code, anything else. You own it so that you can transfer it into this project. You, under the terms of the licensing and the contributing document and all that. Good thing to learn about right there. If AI writes the code for you and you contribute it, then you really didn't write it. I don't know where the world is on that. Personally, I would like to see somebody learn. I'd like you to learn something. Write the code, edit translate the document, create the icon. And I use AI tool. I have no aesthetic sense or graphical anything capabilities. So I'll use a little AI now and then to create some cover art for the different podcast productions, the audio programming I do. That's like a means to an end. But if I'm going to contribute an open source pull request and I'm going to use AI to generate something, an image or some code or whatever, I didn't really do that. So I'm contributing the work of, in this case, who knows how many thousands of other people on which the model was trained. So we'll see how this pans out. I mean, since the last Hacktoberfest, AI has only become, as we expect, more and more dominant in our society. Probably next year, Hacktoberfest will be run by Llama or Claude or who knows. In the bigger picture, as has been said by other civic volunteer organization drivers that I've spoken to over the last 2 years, when people are not invested, the net cost to the people who are invested is not trivial. That is to say, I am the managing director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation. We used to have people come to our monthly hackathon meetups. They were kind of half hackathon to work on projects together, right? We're all in a shared co-work space in downtown Las Vegas. So half hackathon, let's work on projects together. Half meetup to answer questions, to introduce people, to do some onboarding and so on. The onboarding turned out to be very expensive, and if people aren't invested, they bail. You can't get that time back. So from just generally speaking, and I've heard this sort of anecdotally, something like Hacktoberfest can be a bit of a what do you want to call it? Do you want to call it like, I don't want to call it I don't want it to sound awful. It's just some extra heavy lifting to do, right? It's just an influx of extra engagement. And if the people that are doing it are just going to do one pull request and then move on, they just want to get their 4 for the badge, it just feels different. The pull request might be a token. It is one of the 4 needed to get the badge. So it's like, okay, done with this one. Let me go on to the next one. I mean, it is almost like Halloween, right? Hey, nice costume. Here's your candy. Okay, bye, I guess. Hello. So it's a transaction. And transactions are, they're done. They start, they proceed, they finish, on to the next thing. So pull requests are probably going to be transactional. You may find someone who wants to continue working on a project. That's probably ideal. If there's a good, that word, synergy, then maybe something will come of it, and that's good. And I don't know what the stats are. In fact, I don't even know if they keep those stats. That would be interesting. That's a question I will probably ask at some point during the month. There is a Hacktoberfest Discord. It's kind of a cacophony, but we'll see if I can find someone to ask that question. I'm curious to know what the stats are. So the downside part 2 for the submitters, as of this moment, GitHub alone shows over 130,000 repositories with the Hacktoberfest topic attached. In fact, let me update it right now. Obviously, this is subject to change. Okay, it went up. It was, before I clicked refresh, it was a 137,000. I totally forget what the number. It was 700 and something, and now it's 838. So I think it went up by like 50 to 75, somewhere in there. So it's 137, coming up on 138,000 public repositories. This is like a top level search. You can do other searches. You can actually do a search with a topic : Hacktoberfest, and then other keys you'd like to filter on. To be honest, 137,838 projects. Let me see what it is now. Still. Okay, nobody added one in the last 2 minutes. That's a lot of projects. GitLab. So again, in the links I read earlier, that's the link for GitHub for the Hacktoberfest topic. And that's like a preset search. You can search by a topic. But again, you can search by using a query format. So you can search for topic : Hacktoberfest and then other terms if you want to try to whittle that down. But and then GitLab doesn't give a total, so it's probably a smaller big number. Probably not 137,000, but it's more than 10. Drilling down, it might be interesting. You can try to find something that would be interesting to submit to, but it can be frustrating. That's a lot of projects to try to wade through. You may not find something. The thing you would be interested in might be hiding behind 100,000 other things. I mean, it is daunting. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing. It's just like, wow, this is more is not necessarily better. And the interesting thing with this vast collection of possibilities, let me go back to that page. So I don't know what the sort order is. Oh, okay. Might be by updated. So free code camp is the first result that I'm seeing now. Your mileage may vary. It says updated now. The second entry, the ebook foundation free programming books, updated 4 hours ago. Roadmap.sh updated 37 minutes ago. So not sorted by updated. Okay. So who knows? Who knows how they're going to be sorted? Oh, right now they're sorted by most stars. There you go. So recently updated. I'm on it. Okay, so a bunch of these 137,838 projects are updating. They're getting some attention right now. Ooh, the one at the top of the list, Vimal03 Alimento, has a Hacktoberfest accepted topic. I don't know if that's supposed to be a topic. I think you're supposed to label the pull request. Anyway, these are active. It is October 1st. There's good reason to consider the fact that this train is moving, but it's a lot. The badge as motivator may not be a great idea. That is probably a personal trait, but the ticking clock and a 4 PR goal. You got to do 4 pull requests to get your badge. Might not be the best way to get or to test these waters, to get into the water, to dip your toe into the water, however you want to envision. Like a hackathon in general, the first one may be a bit disorienting and can easily be disheartening. The first time I went to a hackathon, I think it was PenApps, when I was working for Intel. I had been at things that were similar to hackathons, but my introduction to hackathons was only 10 years ago. And it was at a giant event, and it was quite fun, but I was not, well, I did stay awake the whole time, but I was not trying to complete a project. I was helping people complete a project. So when you're working on an all-night, clock is ticking challenge, it's a lot. It's a lot to jump into. So if you've never done this before and you tackle Hacktoberfest and it turns out to be kind of a lot, it might not be attractive. It might end up saying, that's not really for me. I don't know that taking on a challenge of some sort would be helpful, or I have a suggestion that I will make later. It might be disheartening, especially if the first timer is placing any pressure on themselves. If you're like, oh, I should have done better, I should have done more, I should have finished that thing. There's no reason for any of that. But the attitude going in may make a huge difference on how you feel coming out of it. You may, and for projects and maintainers with a lot of incoming pull requests, which, we just saw there's a lot of projects, but let's be honest, what are the chances that someone will get, unless they change the sort order? But if they're looking for, okay, what projects are going on right now? What's going on with the going on? The ones that are getting the most activity might be the most interesting, or, some other. Either way, you can only sort the projects in so many ways. So there will be a first page. And if there's anything that SEO people know, search engine optimization, that first page is where it's at. If you can be in the first 10 or so, you're going to get the most attention. So that means those projects might get more pull requests. So if they're getting a lot of incoming, there may be some less useful feedback, or a pull request might be rejected outright. Then like, why? I thought I did a good job. These are possibilities, not guaranteed to be a less than ideal situation, but it might be. But by focusing effort into a 1 month period, there's a bit of pressure on the maintainer side, and that may leak out onto the submitter side. So in other words, during the month of October, you may see a drastic change in the number of pull requests, and they may need more triage. They may need more comment. They may send it back. It might be better to just reject it outright. It will depend. And again, I've heard anecdotally, because we did not participate last year. We didn't participate last year because none of our projects were really in the good shape to do anything. And I think this year we might have some parts of Agile for Volunteers, and especially the documentation and the tessellation stuff might be in some sort of a state by the end of this week where people could take a look at it. And again, the README project, which I linked to, not everything is code. Maybe you can look at the documentation and some of the tool notions, the plans, give your feedback, be a part of the planning process. Who knows? So we'll see where things are a couple days in so we can consider participating. And of course, I will be perusing these 137,000 projects and then whatever's on GitLab. They don't provide a count, so I don't know. But I'll see what's on there. We'll see how it goes. And really, when I think about it, we should be mirroring our projects onto GitLab or a self-hosted GitLab. That's a separate thing. But anyway, so it's a 1 month sort of compressed time frame for this incoming extra traffic, depending on where you are in the search results. And that may lead to quicker, more terse responses. Who knows? We'll see how the month goes. I don't know how they report on that. If they do, I don't know if there's any contributor feedback. How did this go for you? Are you going to continue? That would be interesting. Downside part 3, infrastructure. So projects must be hosted on, or otherwise stored. I don't know if hosted is the right word. It's the origin or upstream server, depending on how your stuff exists in the world. But you pretty much have to be using GitHub or GitLab, which may leave out some projects that are not using those two platforms. There is a Bitbucket They're self-hosted. There might be a roll your own. Maybe you're using Git with a web server, whatever the Savannah project was, I think, that GNU was using. So yeah, not everybody's using GitHub and GitLab. In fact, some projects may be, well, I think I will make a note of this. I will not step on my own notes. The use of Hacktoberfest topic to find projects to consider contributing to, fix a little typo, contributing to is a bit coarse, right? You don't really initially like the links I have there. You're going to have to do some work to try to drill down into something that might be interesting. To a newcomer, this might be daunting. This might be like, ooh, that's a lot of projects. I'll just pick something on the first page. And it might not be the best fit. So I would like to see somehow to make it easier to find a place to join in. And we'll get to my idea in the next section. So yeah, from an infrastructure standpoint, you don't really get, for the newcomer, for the beginner, you're like, well, you have these two choices and you can navigate the search tools, or, it's kind of a last mile problem. Come and contribute. Okay, you're at the front door. Okay, well, good luck. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm simply saying, like, I think there's a little bit more that could be done to cast a wider net to enable more people to participate that are not using GitHub and GitLab, etc. So Hacktoberfest, like the term hackathon, in my experience, conjures images of laptops and Red Bull and all-nighters, writing code and writing more code. While I'm not suggesting a name change or anything, the low-code, no-code paths, and I did tell you what that link was, they're a bit understated. It's one link. Now, that leads to more information, but whenever you hear the word hackathon, I will not forget this soon. I want to do a hackathon for what happens when a city, especially a so-called smart city, becomes a dumb city. And this is obviously apropos. What if your city has been cracked open with fire? Maui, California, all over, some parts of Nevada. So fire can wreak havoc. There can be flooding, obviously, in the East Coast and different parts of the eastern United States that got hit by this hurricane that don't normally get hit this hard by a hurricane. So they're, places are destroyed with who knows how long between now and any sort of normalcy. So I'm a CERT volunteer, Community Emergency Response Team, which is part of FEMA. And I have asked the CERT people, like, do you ever, when you activate CERT volunteers, which I don't even know if they've done that on the East, in the eastern states. It's not is it the coast? It's North Carolina and was it Tennessee? Anyway, wherever the affected areas, have they activated their CERT volunteers? Maybe. Do you ever gather the CERT volunteers after and say, what did we learn? What can we improve on? And they're like, no. Oh, really? Okay. No retrospective. Nope. We send them home. So I don't know if people are learning. So I said, what if we do a hackathon where we actually come up with a scheme to enable that feedback and some other, what can we learn, and take a hackathon approach. So I said, what if there's a smart city hackathon about when you are unexpectedly a dumb city, so all of a sudden, and right away you get an IT response like, oh yeah, our IT department's not going to, and I said, no, it's not an IT hackathon. It's an emergency management office hackathon. And City of Las Vegas has an EMO that runs the CERT for the whole of Southern Nevada, but it takes some convincing, which I did not reach yet. So the take home is that the word hackathon, Hacktoberfest, these kind of imply technology, programming. And so it's important to make it clear up front, like, and other things. And that's tricky. And it depends on how, you have to make effort. You have to put the effort in. And I'm not saying the Hacktoberfest people have not put in effort. Don't try to accuse me of that. But what I am saying is I didn't even think about this initially. I heard it a few times. I was like, what? It's just a name, Code for Vegas. But that is, that's what you see on the door. So I'm not sure if it's totally clear that not everything is code, so that anyone can contribute, can participate in Hacktoberfest and beyond. So if Hacktoberfest is considered an introduction to newcomers, the door might be more broadly opened with brighter light shining upon it, perhaps, with the hopes that people will stick around after October 31st, maybe. Good copy editing. Totally valuable. Thinking out loud. So obviously Project Act, these are my thoughts on all of this. Like, what can we do about the downsides? And none of the downsides are detrimental. They don't leave a bad taste in your mouth, hopefully. If you encounter any of the, why did they reject my pull request? It's that you just, fix up what they said, and, this is the way the world works. So it is an introduction. It doesn't always go first try. So obviously Project Act would fit into this model nicely. The tessellation initiative. While we are using GitHub, thanks to the gratis team tier, thanks Microsoft and GitHub, there should be no reason to limit use to GitHub and GitLab. So the tessellation project will, of course, be relying on decentralized semantic web features from the days of old. So a dope and a fof description of a project is an RDF XML file. Fof is friend of a friend, RDF XML file. Structured ways to connect different organizations to each other and to publish in an opt-in fashion your projects. So you could literally make any project and you can publish it on your website. It doesn't have to be GitHub. Put it in a well-known location, just like an RSS feed. That part's easy. Trust me. So, right. So you can actually participate regardless of whether you're using GitHub or GitLab, or if you just have a website, or if you just have a thing that people can work on. Pull requests might even not be the best unit of contribution in all cases. What if there's a contribution to a Figma project or Penpot, which is open source? A shared document used for managing documentation. Maybe somebody's writing everything in a Google Doc or a Teams doc or whatever the various equivalents are. So do I have to use GitHub? What if I'm using a different collection of tools, but somebody else wants to contribute through that path? So we should be able to advertise and connect those things without relying completely on GitHub and GitLab. This might be a little bit wild, but suppose in order to participate, you must have a project that is also open for participation. That is, I can contribute to your project and you can contribute to mine. This is not a punitive matter. It's not like you wouldn't be necessarily, not required, but encouraged. How about that? It's a way to present a more well-rounded open source experience. What does it mean to select a license, to create a public repository or equivalent, to publish your shared link to your workspace documents, whatever you need to do. Maybe this is for a second time participant. Like first time is already kind of crazy. Second time, bring a project, contribute to a project or something. I'm wondering whether leaning, can't read my own writing. I'm wondering whether leaning on the pull request and the contribution side is too much of a good thing when you could present a more well-rounded experience on the contributor and maintainer sides, since they do go together. Hacktoberfest is explicitly October 1st to the 31st, 1 through 31. There is an FAQ on the Hacktoberfest website, on the website about the Hacktoberfest itself, going through some particular nuances during the month, but it is the month, right? Like what happens if you do certain things before the month? They only count between the 1st and the 31st, but if you sign up after, you can still get credit for as long as they're between the 1st and the 31st, et cetera, et cetera. So you can flip through those if you want. And that's all. So Summer of Code is another thing. So that's a summer. I think it's Google Summer of Code. There are likely other events similar to this. I think there was a season of documentation or something. So there are different time frames when there's an emphasis, and you can hopefully encourage discovery and get some attention and so on. There are some challenges. I think in next week, sometime in the next 14 days or something, is the NASA International Space Apps Challenge, and the U.S. Congressional Apps Challenge is in November, as in due date. There are others, and I'm not saying these dots aren't implicitly connectable. maybe people would figure this out, but drawing the dots on a dry erase board and connecting them might be useful. So that is, the timing is bad, but if you worked on a NASA SpaceX Challenge project and you create a repository or equivalent for it, you could maybe open that up for contribution from others once you've submitted it for the challenge itself. So if Hacktoberfest was timed, or if these other challenges were timed sort of less coincident and more separated in time, I mean, you can always submit something from this year, your NASA SpaceX Challenge submission in 2 weeks, and then next year could be a Hacktoberfest project. But either way, taking part in the challenges could leave a project that the Hacktoberfest engagement challenge could satisfy. They could contribute to it, or you would at least kind of learn the ropes about having an open source project that is open for contribution. So you can keep that momentum going. Like, oh, this is the challenge project that I did 10 months ago, and now we are enabling others to do it. We've continued to work on it, etc. Just some ideas. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation still has a bunch of initiatives that could use some contribution. That's been the hardest part. And it's not just Innovate for Vegas. The general civic volunteerism terrain has changed since Code for America did what they did, keeping people interested. It's a post-pandemic world, so that has had some impact on just getting people to re-engage. So some of these things are just facts of life, but these are mostly longer-term projects that we have, or initiatives, with different component projects using our new Agile for Volunteers lexicon. And so these would benefit from ongoing development, contribution, and so on. We need to start, or kind of rejigger, as we say, to kind of shuffle the projects a little bit with better plans and scoping and whatnot, especially some of the blue sky stuff to establish the why. Why are we doing this project? Why is this initiative something that's worth doing? Some initial component project seeding, like some tasks and maybe some initial starting code, or maybe some tests and so on. But the Agile for Volunteers initiative has come to the fore recently as a possibility for underpinning the diverse contribution to initiatives notion, initiatives and component projects by longer-term team members, or part-time or even one-time contribution by remote participants. This would be through pull requests or other. For our uses, we're kind of leaning on GitHub. So even things that are not software projects can be managed through GitHub as like a tracking repository, and that will be something of an education. So we'll see. But yeah, these are opportunities to try it out with people this month. So it's a potential fit for the Hacktoberfest model. Perhaps we can enable some of the Agile for Volunteers plans in the overview project, component project repository. So OV, Agile for Volunteers. Maybe people would want to flip through those and contribute some ideas or give some feedback. We can look at the document. There are several pages of documentation. What is this? Why are we doing this? How could it work? The thing with Agile is you're supposed to be able to modify it to your needs so that people feel like they're getting somewhere. The notion of Agile, that's what it's about. So we have a couple of days to see if we can put it in a kind of a shape that could take some critical eyes looking at it. The Project Act tessellation is the obvious choice, though, not only because it might be a collection of smaller contributions using Python or TypeScript or JavaScript. Python in one version, I guess, or one implementation, and TypeScript or JavaScript for another. We could do front end, like running in a web browser versions. We can have Python code that would run as a backend or as an action. JavaScript also is that action. So yeah, there would be ways to try out little pieces. The entire tessellation initiative has only a small number of component projects under it. So that would not be totally crazy, and we're not really reinventing anything at all. In fact, we're leveraging tried and true semantic web or triples, RDF. We're using things that have been used for exactly this purpose before, to connect, to make people discoverable so they can connect, communicate, collaborate. We can create a tessellation namespace. That might be new for some people. That would fit nicely into the graph, the RDF schema notion. There's some possibilities for the tessellation visualization, some graphs, the tessellation project for the general public will include literally a tessellation, which is a mosaic representing the projects that people are working on in different parts of the country or world or universe. So Project Act is not really big, especially the tessellation. The transformation side is not even, that's really more informative, not really program. It's not coding so much. The first rendition of the tessellation initiative could be something that we could take submissions over the month and see what happens with the different component projects. We have editing your local project description and relation description files. They're very simple. Who knows whom? What are you working on? Where's the GitHub repository? Is there a mailing list? Is there a homepage? Right? These are just standard. It's almost like a form. So tracking this data, we need a spider that will go and read these files and keep them up to date. We need a search engine, so a catalog of projects. And then we need visualization, so people can see the relationship between things and then make the catalog searchable so that the visualization will show different views. It'll look in different ways. And then we can start adding on things like, there's 138,000 projects here. Well, can I do some sort of an AI magic search? Today you can. So we should implement that. So how can we turn, can I filter on Python and Flask? And what if it's describe something that's interesting to you, and we'll try to pluck a dozen projects that match your prompt, right, your query. So this is a direction that could be taken. We could take this direction and run with it through the month of October. So as long as we have the basic idea spelled out, hey, that's what Agile for Volunteers is about, then we could actually invite people to contribute to some of the different component projects and see what happens. Hacktoberfest projects, whether they're on GitHub or GitLab or not, as long as they're discoverable, they could end up being Hacktoberfest projects for next year if Project Act tessellation works as intended and as if it's adopted. So if we can literally get people that are working on Hacktoberfest projects, initiatives in our case, if we can get them to contribute to this thing and then they can say, oh, this is how we could discover Hacktoberfest projects for next year, and they don't even have to be on GitHub or GitLab, that would be an interesting story to tell. As you can hear, my tea was not completely successful. It's not even hot anymore. I think it helped a tiny bit, but not for very long. It's too bad. I will remind you to check out the links for this episode. Don't forget, probably our GitHub organization is the most current. GitHub.com/innovate4Vegas. We are a 501c3 organization, tax deductible donations. We don't really have a handout just yet, but eventually we'll start doing some cool things that will make some splash, and maybe people will want to support the effort. So we'll see. But right now, no hard selling. Just happy to have spoken into your ears for this brief time. This being October 1st, at the beginning of Hacktoberfest 11, Hacktoberfest 2024. You can listen to this all you want, but you should consider whether you'd like to contribute to a Hacktoberfest repository project on GitHub or GitLab and see how you like it. And then we'll tune in next week. Hopefully by next week's episode 86, we'll have something to say about what we decided to do and who's working on what, if we're doing that, or a host of other things. So many things going on. So on that note, I will leave you. Thank you so much for participating in this. I was gonna say, I thought it was 46. It's 56 minutes right now. When I truncate silence, it'll probably be 46, 48 maybe. There you go. Thanks for listening, and happy Hacktoberfest. And if I don't hear from you, happy Halloween. Bye-bye.